went back 2 weeks later for my booster shot. Anyway, I have this vividly burned into my brain. And since then, I've been vaccinated 2 more times because each time I got pregnant, they vaccinated me again because I'd never made antibodies they could measure. But I've never gotten the chickenpox, so. Anyway, the vaccine prevents 3.5 million cases of chickenpox, thousands of hospitalizations, lots of deaths. It's a really good vaccine to get, and I think they give it to you with the MMR vaccine now. So it's just mixed in there. It's not even an extra shot. I highly recommend it. How many of you just got the chickenpox vaccine and never got the chickenpox? Really? How many of you got the chickenpox? Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, well, make sure you're 1995. I don't know. I have to do the math. At some point, I'm going to have this is going to shift because still most people raise their hand and say they get the chickenpox. Well, I don't need to tell you about this because you lived it, right? Itchy, fluid-filled blisters. They turn into scabs after about a week. After they're all scabbed over, you're considered not infectious. But people are usually, kind of mildly ill before, and then the rash just itches, from what I understand, in kind of a big way, and it's fairly spectacular. This one's droplet transmitted, so it's pretty easy to get. Lollipop parties are one of the ways that people still try to get people, get their kids the chickenpox. And so you can transmit droplets if you lick the same lollipop really easily. The incubation period is about 10 to 21 days, and so every time I would get exposed to the chickenpox, because back in the 90s it was common for people to get it, I would worry for 3 weeks until it didn't show up. And if you didn't get it after 3 weeks, you knew that you had escaped at that time. So usually doctors can just recognize varicella zoster virus infection by looking at you. I don't know if not so much now. I'm not sure I totally agree with that. It's still pretty common. But now we can also do serological tests. These tests, as it turns out, work really well for people who've gotten the virus, but not so well for people who've been vaccinated, which is probably why they kept vaccinating me, because I've never actually had the virus. I just got the vaccine. But if you get a blood test, it won't show up if you've just been vaccinated. But there are also molecular PCR tests now that are available too, where we can see if someone's been infected with varicella zoster. Okay, so complications. So why was I so upset about getting chickenpox? So mostly because I was young and dating at the time, and I didn't want the chickenpox. So it looked bad, right? If you're a little kid and you got pox, it's one thing, but like in my 20s, it's a wild time. But it also can make you really sick, particularly in adults. So I showed you earlier when we talked about staph and infections, and we talked about, I can't remember which one it was, strep or staph, the child with the chickenpox who had that tissue that was being removed, the necrotic tissue, where a pox had gotten infected. So little kids tend to scratch, and so it's very easy to get a skin pathogen into the blister. You can also get the viral pneumonia as a result of chickenpox. You can have brain swelling, so 20% of hospital admissions are swelling in the brain. You can end up with bleeding problems or sepsis and dehydration. So bacterial secondary infections in this case as a result of the chickenpox. So you can actually get really sick, particularly someone with a compromised immune system. So it's September 2018 now. So this just came out. I put this in here. There was a report very recently, and this is a link to the article if you wanted to read it, of a child that had varicella who had a stroke. So the encephalitis, the brain involvement of the virus caused a stroke in this 11-month-old. And one of the things they ask in the article is, the child got the chickenpox from all the older siblings, so how come the older siblings weren't vaccinated? And was this one of those cases where a parent decided it was better off kids getting sick than getting the vaccine? And this is an example of why it's always better with the vaccine. Getting sick the old-fashioned way is, it's not. It might be safe most of the time, but it's not without risks, and the risks are certainly greater than the vaccine. All right. Varicella zoster virus is a herpes virus. It's a DNA virus. It has an envelope. It only infects humans. It attaches to the respiratory mucosa, and then what it does is it actually enters your bloodstream and travels to your skin. And that's where the virus will actually cause the skin cells to fuse and cause blisters, and that causes the little pox that you see. So it's a fairly nasty virus that way. One of the things about chickenpox is that that herpes is forever? So what chickenpox virus does, like all herpes viruses, is that once you get better, you think it's gone, but it's not. It travels into your neurons and it stays in a true latent stage where it just sits there for years and years and years. So all of you who raised your hand who've got the chickenpox, you still have it. And someday, if your immune system is weakened for lots of different reasons, I'll give you a quick example is when the HIV epidemic hit, one of the signs that people had immune-compromised bodies was that they were getting, these young, healthy guys were getting shingles. The chickenpox virus can re-emerge and cause shingles. And because I'm out of time and because this topic is so interesting, I'm going to wait and tell you about shingles next time, so I don't have to rush. I'm usually around 7:30. You don't need to be here that early. See you at 8.